Hey everybody, Matt here with Imagine Then Make. Thanks for stopping by. Well, this is part 6 of my series that teaches Python programming to complete beginners. Now, if you missed any of the earlier episodes, just check the video description for some links. All right, so in this episode, we're going to take everything we learned from the previous episodes and build a very simple guess the number type game. You're going to see the whole step-by-step process that I go through, and I'm really excited to show it to you. All right, so I started writing some code, and I want to start going over it with you. Okay, so here's my file, my Python file. I do want to make a quick note about my file naming conventions because it's really served me well. Maybe it'll help you out. I typically start my file name, and of course these are files that are in development, so they're going to get lots of editing as the program gets more and more finished. Okay, so I tend to start my file name with the date. So I go year, month, day. So 2025-01 for January and the 11th for the 11th day in January. Then I have a space and then a simple text name for my file, something that's descriptive but not overly long. Here I have simple guessing game. I do tend to use underscores between words just to make it more readable. Then I have a space and a lowercase v standing for version and then a number. This is the first version of this program, so hence the number 1. The file extension is .py, so the Python interpreter knows that this is a Python file. And then lastly, I have learned the hard way, unfortunately, to keep all of my valuable files I would be upset if I lost, on an external hard drive, or you could use a flash drive. Okay, unfortunately, I've had the experience of having a drive go down inside my computer. My hard drive failed inside my desktop computer, and that caused a lot of aggravation and delay in continuing while I tried to recover those files. Now, I don't do that anymore. I have an external hard drive connected to my computer, and I store all of my very valuable files I would be upset if I lost, on an external hard drive. Mine is called E right at the moment. And just as a side note, I have multiple external hard drives. Okay, so that's my file naming convention. All right, the first thing I start doing after I've named my file is I start adding in some comments right at the top. So here you can see I've done that. I tend to use a last edit date comment. That's helpful so that if at some point in the future I'm looking at a printout of this code, I can tell when the last time it was edited. Then I'm repeating the name of the game here, again, just so that when I'm looking at a printout, I know what I'm looking at. And then right here, there's 3 comments that indicate what it is I want to accomplish in the game. So the first one is introduce the game, so put some text on the screen so the user knows what they're looking at. The second thing is generate a random number, because we're going to need a random number in order to have a number to try and guess. Okay, and I've already decided what the name of that random number will be, r_num. Again, naming things can get kind of tricky, so when I think of a name that I want to use, I make a note of it so I don't have to rely on trying to remember what I thought of a while ago. And then the third thing is to try and guess the number until you get it correct, right? Guessing game. Or the user enters a Q instead of a number to gracefully exit the game. Okay, there is going to be a game loop in this. We'll get to that in a little bit. So I'm already thinking ahead that I need to provide a graceful way for the user to exit the game. Okay, then for completeness than for anything else, I put a comment in here that indicates when the program starts, and then a matching comment down here when the program ends. This is a very short program, so it's kind of not really needed, but I'll say again, since you're just starting as a programmer, this is the best time to start building some good habits for yourself. Okay, and then so we have program start and program end, so the actual program is what's in between. So we'll talk about that in a second. All right, let's continue talking about the code that's in between the program start and program end comments. Here you'll see a group of print statements. In an earlier video, we talked about using the print statement to display some text on the screen for the user to read. Okay, I'll call your attention to this particular line here. To quit the game, enter Q as your guess. This provides the information right on the screen for the user to understand how to gracefully exit the game should they need or want to do that. Okay, and that was also, these print statements really encompass trying to accomplish this goal, and that is to introduce the game to the user. Okay, so that one's done. Okay, then in an earlier video, once again, we talked about the import statement and importing the random module, and then actually generating a random number. And here we're assigning it to r_num as my variable. And this is the name that I decided for myself way up here. Okay, so we accomplished that. And because we're still very much in the development phase, we're going to go ahead and print the random number to the screen so we can use that information as we continue to develop and also debug future versions of this program, because again, we are at version 1 so far. All right, that covers the discussion of the code here. So let's go ahead and run this and see what we get. Run it the same way we've been running the other programs in the earlier episodes. Okay, so here's our text on the screen. So here's the result of our print statements right here. It generated a random number and printed it out. This time it got 30. Let's try running it again. That time we got 28. So clearly these two numbers are between 0 and 100, and they're whole numbers or integers, which is what we were asking the randint method to do. So let's click on, there's another one. It got 61. Got 31. We're kind of filling up our screen here. Make it a little bigger, run a couple more times. That time I got 32, and this time I got 34. Okay, so you can see that our screen is pretty filled up. If you want to start fresh with a clear screen, there isn't any real way to clear all this stuff out. The easiest thing I found to do is just to go ahead and close the window and then run your program again, and you'll start with a fresh window. All the previous results are not there anymore to distract you. So this time I got 35, 14. Okay, so I'm convinced that version number 1 is working correctly. Let's move on to version number 2. All right, so we just finished looking at version 1 of the code right here, version 1, and this is version 2, as it says right there. So hopefully you can see that everything is identical right down to this print random number line right here. Okay, so all of the code that's highlighted right here in version 2 is new. So how did I get to version 2? I just made a copy of version 1. I just saved it as a different name and changed the 1 up here to a 2 right there. And then I typed in this code. So now let's talk about it. All right, so we're looking at version number 2 now, and we know that all of this code right here is what's been added to version number 1 to make up version number 2. Okay, so first line that's been added is an assignment. So guess_num is another variable, and I assigned a value of -1 to it. I'll come back to that in a second. The next line is the keyword while. So this starts a while loop in Python. And the way this works is all of the code that's indented right underneath the keyword while. So I typically use 4 spaces to indent lines. So all of these indented lines, this code will run over and over and over and over again as long as this expression resolves to true. Okay? So this expression is like a question, and it can only be answered with a true or a false. So the question is, does guess_num, this variable right here, does it not equal the random number that came from the random number generator. Well, -1 can't equal the random number because the random number has to be between 0 and 100 inclusive. So -1 does not equal some number between 0 and 100. So this resolves to true. Because this is true, now we're going to enter the while loop, and we're going to start with the very first line inside the while loop. And that line is going to call for the user to actually guess the number. It's going to be, we're going to use an input command just like we have before to gather that data, that response from the user, and set whatever the user types in here to the variable guess_num. So now it doesn't equal -1 anymore. It equals whatever the user typed in. Okay. And I'll mention again, we're not doing any checking right now. So the way this code is written, the user could type anything. But right now we're going to assume that the user is going to type in a valid number between 0 and 100, a valid whole number, integer. Okay, so assuming the user does that, then we go to the next line where we print the random number, which was found up here, and we also print what the user guessed, which was collected right here in the input statement. And we print a blank line right here, and now we enter in another, we come across another keyword you haven't seen before, and this is the if keyword. So if is just like while, if is a very valuable Python keyword. It reads a lot like English. So if so if I read this here, if guess_num equals, and that's what a double equal sign is. A single equal sign, remember, is an assignment operator, but when you have two of them together, it means legitimately equals, okay? So if guess_num, in other words, the input the user typed in right here, if that's equal to the lowercase letter q, then run the indented line underneath the if keyword, and that would be a break command, another keyword. And what break does is it exits the while loop gracefully. Okay? If they don't type in the letter Q, then this does not get executed. It gets skipped because this resolves to false. It's not true. So then we go down to this if command, and it says if guess_ equals the random number. So if whatever they typed in up here equals the random number that was determined right here, then we're going to execute these indented lines of code, indented underneath the second if keyword. And the first one is going to be a print statement. Congratulations, your guess is correct. And then we're going to execute a break, which we now know gets us out of the while loop gracefully. If this is not true, so if they haven't typed a Q, then it does this. If the guess does not equal the random number, then it skips this. And we're now down to the if keyword. And so what happens here is, because this is false up here, this is false right here, it goes down to this else section, and it runs the code in the else section, the indented code. And in this case, it's another print command, print statement that says, sorry, your guess is not correct, try again. Then what happens is the program goes all the way back up to the while loop, and it reevaluates and asks the question, does guess_num not equal the random number? If that's true, which it will be, then it goes through the while loop, and it does this over and over and over again. There's only two ways to exit the while loop. Either the user enters in a queue or guesses the correct number. Okay, so let's run it and we'll see it in action. Okay, so there's our text that gets printed when these print statements are run. Then we do the import, we generate a random number, and then we print out what the random number is, which is right there. This time it chose 19. Now we're sitting at this input prompt, guess the number, 0 to 100. So I'm going to guess 45 and press enter. Okay, so then we're down to here. This line gets executed. So the random number is printed, and then the number I guessed is printed, which is right there. Random number 19, and the guess number 45, which is what I entered. Then it goes down. I didn't type in a Q, so it skips that. The guess number does not equal the random number, so it skips that. And it runs the else command, which prints, sorry, your guess is not correct, try again. So we'll just cut right to the chase here, and we'll put in 45. Oh, I did that before. What I meant to put in was an 18. Okay. Okay, congratulations, your guess is correct. So the next time through the loop, it takes my input, the third time actually, and I put in 19. That happens to match the random number. So it skips this because I didn't type in a Q. It skips, it actually runs this because my guess does equal the random number. It prints out, congratulations, your guess is correct, right there. And then it executes the break, which gracefully exits the while loop. I know I'm outside the while loop because I'm sitting at the Python interpreter waiting for the next command. Okay, so that works. Let's try one more time, and this time we'll enter in. Well, again, I'll enter in. It got a random number of 4, so I'll type in 6. That's clearly not correct. So this time I'll type in a lowercase q, hit enter, and here we are at the Python interpreter prompt. So I know that the program has been exited gracefully. So we know that this part works, we know that this part works, and we know that this part works. Okay, so from a code point of view, it works the way I intended, but it's not really good enough. So let's look at version number 3, and I'll show you what I mean. All right, we just finished looking at version 2, which is this one right here. And I've put right next to it version 3. How I got to version 3 was I just was on version 2. I did a save as, changed the 2 to a 3, saved it, and that's what gave me version number 3, and then I edited it. So let's see what I added here. So everything is the same all the way down to here. Okay, so this print random number command right here, I just put a comment symbol in front of it, a pound symbol, just to comment out the line. So when the interpreter gets to this line, it thinks it's a comment, so it'll just skip it. What else is different? Well, we got the Q in there, but now I've got another if statement in here, and actually it's an if, else, if. And then I have the same if statement down here when the guessed number actually equals the random number. So it's these lines right here which have been added, okay? All right, so let's look at it. So here's another if statement. So let's assume that the user has typed in a guess, a whole number between 0 and 100, and it does not equal the random number, right? So we're inside the while loop, and he or she didn't type in a Q, so it skips this, and now we're down to the new one. And it reads, if the guess underscore num is greater than the random number, then run this print statement, which is indented underneath this if. And it says, so if the guess number is greater than the random number, then it'll print your guess is too high, guess a smaller number. Okay? If that's not true, then it goes down to the else part, and it says else, if guess num is less than the random number, then print this, which is indented under this if keyword. Print your guess is too low, guess a larger number. And then we're done with the new code, right? That's where the new code stops. And then we pick up right here, if the guess num actually equals the random number, which is the same code we had here. And then down here, we know we no longer need this else or this print because it's taken care of with this if. So we just comment those out. Okay, so let me just, I'm going to minimize version 2 now that we understand what version 3 is going to do. And we're going to run version 3 and see what happens. Okay, so just looks like all the other times we see our text printed here. It generates a random number. We print the random number. In this case, it's 87. And now the program is sitting here right at this input statement wanting me to guess a number. So I still know the random number is 87, so I can guess around 87 to check the rest of the code below. So let's type in 50. Your guess is too low, guess a larger number. So it saw that I didn't enter in a queue, then it went down to this if statement. If the guess number is greater than the random number, well, my guess number is less than the random number. So since my guessed number is greater than the random number, it skips this, goes to the else, and then this if. If the guess number is less than the random number, my guess number is 50, the random number is 87. So this part's true, so then it prints this indented line. It executes it rather, and it prints your guess is too low, guess a larger number, which is exactly what it printed. So then it goes to this if statement, and it sees that the random number does not equal the guessed number. So it skips this, gets to the end of the while loop code block, circles back up to the while loop, executes this expression, resolves this expression, guess num does not equal the random number. Well, yes, that's true, because the guess number was 50 and the random number is 87, so they're not equal. So it enters the while loop again. It puts this input prompt. So now let's guess 95. Okay, so we guessed 95 right here. It's not a queue, so it skips this. It goes down here. If the guess number is greater than the random number, which it is, I guessed 95, and the random number is 87, so my guess is greater than the random number. So this part's true, so it executes this indented print statement. Your guess is too high, guess a smaller number. Your guess is too high, guess a smaller number. Okay, so hopefully you're seeing how this works. Because this part was true, then we don't have to even evaluate these. So it just skips this. It does go down and evaluate this though, and it checks to see if the guess number is equal to the random number, which it is not. 95 still does not equal 87. So it skips that, goes back up to the while loop, executes this expression again, evaluates it, guess number does not equal the random number, and that's true. 95 doesn't equal 87. So now we're sitting here at the prompt looking for another guess. So this time I'll just cut to the chase and I'll guess 87, which I know is the random number. And it says, congratulations, your guess is correct. So when I put 87 in here, it knows it's not a queue, so it skips that. It knows that it's not greater than the random number, so it skips this. It knows that it's not less than the random number, so it skips this. It gets down to here, and it determines, yes, the guessed number is equal to the random number, so it executes this indented print statement. Congratulations, your guess is correct, and then it executes a break, which I know it did because here we are at the Python interpreter prompt. Okay, there's only one other thing to test, and that's to make sure that the queue works. So the next time I run it, it comes up with a random number of 56. Let's just type in, I don't know, 99. Now we're too high. Let's guess a smaller number, 45. Now we're too low. Let's guess a larger number. Okay, well, let's just say I got to go. I can't spend any more time playing the game. So I'm going to type in a lowercase q, press enter, and you can see it gracefully exited the loop because now I'm sitting at a Python interpreter prompt. Okay, so we've determined that all this code works by adding this code right here, we provide a little bit more feedback to the player of the game, which makes the game more fun to play, right? Presumably. And we didn't break anything. So one thing to watch out for is when you go ahead and edit working code, oftentimes you're going to get a syntax error. You fat finger some keys, you type something incorrectly, or maybe you're using a keyword or something incorrectly, so you can generate an error. That's why I always start editing a copy of the previous working code. So I can always go back to the previous working code and check to see what's different if I'm stumped and I can't figure out why my new code is producing an error. So that's why I go from version 1 to version 2 to version 3, and that's what we're up to now. We're just finished taking a look at version 3. I'm going to do one more version, version 4. Let me show you what that's all about. All right, we are finished looking at version 3. Now let's look at version 4. So here's version 3 up on the left-hand side of the screen. Here's version 4 to the right. How I got version 4 from version 3, just like before. I just was inside of version 3, editing it, did a save as, changed the 3 to a 4, and then that gave me the version 4 file, and then I edited it. So let's look and see what's different. So it's all the same, all the same, all the same. We have a comment character right here on line number 21. So we no longer want to print the random number. So when we run this again, we're going to be playing the game legitimately. It's not going to display the random number. And likewise down here, well, we always did have that print statement commented out. So we just left that alone. And then down here, we had a couple of commented out lines in version 3 that we determined we no longer need because of the new code that was added. So we just went ahead and deleted those from version 4. So let's minimize version 3. We'll slide version 4 over, and then we'll run it. So we'll play the game legitimately. We don't know what the random number is now. I'm using a rollerball mouse, and sometimes it's a little tricky. Okay, so there's our familiar text right from these print statements. We generated a random number. We can't see what it is now because that command is commented out, so the interpreter skips it. We did print a blank line though, so that's what gave us one blank line and then two blank lines after to quit the game. So we have one there and we have one there. Okay, so now we're sitting at the input command prompt, guess the number. Now I legitimately do not know what the number is, so the math guy in me says, okay, we'll just take the approximate middle between the two, the lowest possible number and highest possible number. So I'll guess 50, press enter. Your guess is too low, guess a larger number. So it has to be between 50 and 100. So half of that distance is about 75, so I'll guess that. Your guess is too high, so now I'm between 75 and 50. There's 25 between them, so half of 25 is about 12. So I'll guess 62. Guess is too low, so now I'm between 62 and 75. So now I'll guess, I don't know, 69. Congratulations, your guess is correct. Okay, so that's how the legitimate game works. And you can see all this code is functioning the way it was intended. Okay, so I really truly hope you understand the whole process that we went through. It's very iterative, though at least the way I approach programming. I start with something very simple and small and then add to it, add to it, add to it, just keep increasing the version number. So I never edit working code. Once it's working, I kind of freeze it, and then I'll make a copy of it, increase the version number, and then edit it to add new features or whatever it is I feel like I need to do or want to do to the program, so that if I have any errors, I can go back to the previous working code and see, try and get some clues as to where the problem could be. So thanks. If you watched this far, thanks very much. I appreciate it. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comment section and I'll be happy to provide a response.